Did you know that myself and 12 other designer makers got scammed by a market organizer for nearly $2,000? Stick around to the end of the video to make sure that you hear how to avoid this happening to you too. In this video, I'm going to go over the top 5 tips that I have learned over the past 10 years of participating in jewelry markets. So let's dive right in. Tip number 1 is making sure that you have a really good understanding of your target audience. This goes such a long way, trust me. For example, with my jewelry, I have Scandinavian minimalist jewelry, and my target audience really appreciates handmade items, slightly more expensive, and they're willing to pay those prices because it's a very different product to just accessorized jewelry or something they bought from Zara. So they really do appreciate that. When I am picking a market, I want to make sure that I'm surrounded by people who also have similar stuff in terms of it's also really handmade, it's high quality, you know, it's really well put together and really well thought out. For example, say you make goth style jewelry, then it would make more sense for you to go to a goth event, for example, rather than to go to some kids fair. See how if you have a really clear understanding of who your target audience is, it really goes a long way in helping you pick and choose the right markets for you. Obviously, in the beginning, you're not going to have a good idea of this yet, and this can come with time. So once you've clarified that target audience, it really helps. One of the students in the Consistent Sales Academy, actually, Nicole, once she clarified her target audience and figured that out, she realized that her target audience was at festivals, and this just made her 3 times her rent in one event. So she was just mind blown by how incredible it is. Now knowing that, it really helps her redirect her energy in terms of that. For you as well, have a think about who your target audience is. Where are similar people going to be going? What type of events are they going to be going to? And try and get yourself into those. So now that you know your target audience, tip number 2 is having a really cohesive brand that your target audience feels at home in when they see it. So when they arrive at your stand, they must go, oh yes, this looks absolutely gorgeous, and they feel really attracted to come and have a closer look. Over the years, for example, my display has changed somewhat, but it's always been clean and minimalist. But I have developed it and adapted it as I've learned and grown with it. And for example, my last display was really great because I got many compliments on it actually, because I'd really honed in on that. And it's also really important to have different levels in it. So try and have a stand that not only feels like your brand, but also elevates the jewelry in one way or another. So picking colors, for example, that really make your jewelry pop. If you use beads and brightly colored jewelry, maybe you want a nice plain background to make your jewelry pop. Maybe you have silver jewelry, then I wouldn't do a gray background, which is one of the mistakes I made at the first market that I did. Is myself and the girls I was doing the stand with, we all decided to paint our displays gray because we thought it was very classy, but gray does not make silver jewelry pop. So that was a mistake that we learned the hard way. We all went and painted them white afterwards, but save yourself the time. Make sure that the color does really complement your type of jewelry. Then also, it's really a good idea to create a really inviting display. So you don't want to be having like duplicates of all the exact same thing, like plates, and they're all the same shape, the same size, and the same height. So you want to really try and elevate, have something hanging, have like different things to engage with so that it looks really interesting. On the other hand though, you don't want to go completely the other way and have a total mix mash of all kinds of different things, because that isn't going to look cohesive either. Think about the things that your target audience will really like, and that adds to the feeling of your brand and the USP of your jewelry. And obviously your first display may not be great. You're still going to be, trying to scrape together the money for the materials of the jewelry, and you're going to prioritize that, and that's totally fine and completely right. But as you go, watch and see what worked well. Once you're there at the market, you can get a better feel for how it all looks. Obviously, it's a good idea to set it up at home beforehand and get a feel for it. But as you go, you can improve the pieces and, find something that works well. Also on top of that as well, it's also a good idea to think, if you are planning on doing more and more markets, then if you're creating really heavy displays, it might be fine for the first couple of times, but then you might be realizing, oh my goodness, this is a nightmare carrying all of this heavy stuff around. I had another friend, another jeweler, who had marble displays which looked gorgeous, but oh my god, so heavy. So think about what materials you're using as well, and do those materials go with your brand as well. Another good idea is to have a look on Pinterest and create an inspiration board with different ideas before you even start going out to source your materials for your displays. Online, you can find so many different things to do your displays. The list is literally endless. You can get quite creative with it. Maybe you know somebody who has particular skills that can help you build something, or maybe you're sourcing different items, but play around with it. And when you're looking on Pinterest, you can get a feel for the aesthetic. Have a think about that and have fun with that. So that is tip number 2. Tip number 3 is all about being confident. Yes, you've got your jewelry there, it looks beautiful, it has a concept, or your collection has an idea or inspiration behind it, but now you need to come across as inviting and confident. And I know in the beginning this can be super scary. I was really fortunate because I've been doing markets since I was literally 5 years old. For my first jewelry market, I was at a stand with 6 other jewelers. We'd all graduated together and we did our first market together, and that was really reassuring, being there, participating with others in this whole new foray and this whole new experience of selling my jewelry. And I know that it can feel super scary putting it out there. Anything that's creative really, and we put it out there in front of the public, can be really scary because it's a piece of us, right? And like, it's something that we've created from the love of our heart, and we don't know how people are going to respond to it. But try not to go to the market with a whole bunch of expectations of, I'm going to sell 30 pieces, or, you know, like, just try and boost yourself up that it's gonna be good, but it's always gonna improve. You might not sell loads at the first time, you might not even sell any, but all of that is a learning opportunity for you to test the audience, test the market. But anyway, that's me getting ahead of myself onto tip number 4. So just to finish up tip number 3, it's all about you having clarity on your brand and practicing your elevator pitch. I'm sure you've all heard of that before, and what your brand stands for, and trying to have a conversation that is about the idea behind the collection rather than simply hoping people will buy something because it's pretty. Obviously that is part of it, but we want to have more of a story behind it to be able to connect with them on some shared values. And another thing to consider is that the reason people buy handmade jewelry is because they like the person behind it, and they really like the idea of supporting an individual rather than a huge big company. That is why it's really important to come with your A game, feel confident, even if you're faking it until you make it. Just try and put yourself into that really positive, inviting mood, and it's really great if you're there with somebody, maybe a partner or a friend, and they can be there with you. It just helps you to be more chatty and to be more inviting and less scary to approach. So not that you're going to be scary, but do you know what I mean? Like, think about the stands you're more inclined to approach. Bring your A game, bring your smiles, bring your bubbly attitude, and just try and have a nice chat with people. Be cash and connect with them. Tip number 4 is all about gathering data and preparing yourself for future markets and their success. So what I mean by this is, take the opportunity to ask people questions, have a chat with them, ask them where else they go. Oh, do you go to markets regularly? Is this your first time? Are there any other ones in the area that you really enjoy going to? How have you found this one? You know, try and chat with people and just get as much information as you can from them. Also then identifying which people are buying from you, trying to understand as much about them as you can. A lot can also be understood non-verbally, so they don't actually have to physically say, I like this, I do that. But you can also tell one by the way that they dress, the way that they interact with you, and get a feel for the type of people, not only their age, because this will help you to really solidify your target audience and clarify that it is what you thought it was, or maybe it's not what you thought it was. So all of this is a learning process and will come with time and improve with time, but it's really important to observe as well. It's also a great opportunity to test out your prices. So if you aren't selling, don't rush to think, oh my goodness, my prices are too high, I need to reduce them, I knew they were too high. Imposter syndrome popping up to say, hi, you're doing rubbish. No, don't listen to that. It might just be a case of the fact that the market itself was not the right one for you, and you haven't actually done your research ahead of time to make sure that it is worth your while doing that market. So also within your collections, you might want to have a couple of different price points of options and see which ones are selling more, which ones people are drawn towards the most, because you know, we're all sitting at home making our jewelry and we think, oh, this is beautiful or this is rubbish. And when we put it out there for people to see, then we actually get feedback from people rather than just our internal critic. And just before I move on to tip number 5 about how not to get scammed, I just wanted to reiterate that it's so important just to do your first market. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have everything figured out. Your display can still be something you work on and improve. You know, once you feel like it's something you want to pursue, it's really a good idea to put your jewelry in front of people, because you may think that it's rubbish at home, or you might think it's amazing, and people might think the opposite. So it's really good idea to put it out there in front of people and to test it amongst real people. Obviously we can post on Instagram as well, and those are real people, but it's easier to see and gauge a genuine reaction when you're in person. For example, one of my students, Aista, she had only been making for 4 months before she joined the Consistent Sales Academy, my online course, and she hadn't done any markets before, hadn't put her jewelry out there. So after, you know, creating her Instagram account, going through the entire course and creating a really beautiful collection with a beautiful story behind it, and preparing her elevator pitch, feeling confident about it. We prepped her in the group calls, you know, in front of all the other students. We got her to, you know, practice her elevator pitch, and that just made it so much easier when she was there. She said she was like really nervous at first, but when she got there, it was actually super easy. She spoke to loads of people and she made quite a few sales in her first event. So that is all because she had so much clarity on it and she felt really confident about what she was offering. It's really important to just get out there, do it, and go from there. Make it a learning experience. Tip number 5, how not to get scammed. So let me tell you my story. This was many moons ago. I would say it's probably my first year after completing my making, and I was out on my own and participating in markets by myself. I got invited to this really amazing sounding event. They were talking about how it's like empowering women and it's a whole women's thing, and I was like, oh, sounds great, sounds lovely. I'm sure some nice people are gonna be there and buy my jewelry, and he has a list of the other designers who are gonna be there as well. Had a look at them and I was like, they look cool, all sounds great. So paid my 150 pounds, which is around probably $180, and I signed up for this event, which was happening in a month and a half. And so I was like, great, plenty of time for me to still prepare everything, make sure I have enough. Worked really hard. I was still working at the school at the time, so this was me working evenings and weekends, making sure that I had enough stock for it. Obviously you don't know what's going to sell, so you just make a bunch of stuff. And yeah, went about this, then got closer to the time, and she said she'll confirm details a bit closer to like what times or some details she had left out. And she said she'll confirm closer to the time. So I hadn't heard from her, so I was like, let me just send across an email. Okay, just checking any about the details, just want to confirm. Radio silence, nothing. So I'm like, okay, maybe she just missed it, gave it a few days, getting a bit worried because it's a week, now it's like 4 days, and I'm like, what's happening? So I decided to actually, I emailed her again, still didn't hear anything. Then I looked up the other designers, I contacted them and I said, hey, have you guys got any of the rest of the details that we're missing? And they said, no, we've been trying to contact her and can't find her. So we're like, okay, right, let's get hold of the venue, see what's going on, maybe something's happened to her, we don't know, always me trying to look on the bright side and see the positive and everything. And contacted the place and they were like, who? Event organized by who? That's when the penny dropped. We've been scammed. Anyway, I tried to find her all over the internet, this woman, Googled her, also asked for my money back through PayPal, and she refused. So I managed to get in touch with her. She completely and utterly refused. Then she said, tried to guilt me into like, oh, things are really tough for me right now. You don't understand. I'm like, okay, but the event got cancelled. You can't just keep my money. So anyway, after me asking nicely a couple of times, even offering her a payment plan for like $20 a month over a couple of months to pay me back, she absolutely point blank refused. So then I said, well, I might need to seek legal help here. So she replied with, well, come over here and sue me, bitch. So that was fun, not. Basically, the moral of the story is do your research beforehand. I don't want to scare you guys, but it really is important to do your research ahead of time. Check a couple of things. So check, is it a legit event? Do they have Instagram or Facebook page? Do they have something backing them up? Because generally you can tell if something's legit if you can see some sort of evidence of them on the internet. If you can't find anything or any reviews or anything like that, alarm bells, stay away from it unless you actually know the organizer and you know it's their first time they're doing it and all of that. And another important thing to be aware of is, are they actually actively advertising the event? Because they may have 20 followers on Instagram and say, yeah, don't worry, there's going to be loads of people coming to the event, and they don't even know how to market it properly. So that is not good. I actually had an experience about that not so long ago in Belgium, where I did participate in two different events, the same organizers, but it was in a venue that also usually participates in the marketing, but for the second event they didn't. And the turnout was so much less than the first time, and that was just really a big show of how much it helps if the body is also advertising it as well. Sure, it's great, you can advertise, you can invite your friends, you can tell everybody about it, but there's no point in you doing all of the work for them. You want them to be bringing people to you as well. Especially if they're charging you a fee to participate, then you may as well have your pop-up at home if you're the one taking control of getting everyone to come. Just your friends and family. And finally, if you want a little extra help, there is another whole video that you can watch, which has got two things for you: a checklist for you for everything you need to bring to the market, and questions to ask the organizer. So I hope you enjoy that, and I'll see you next week. Bye.